Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life's strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the misty depths of the mysterious and unknown. A malicious entity. This happened when I was in my early teens, probably around 2004 or so. I was living with my father at the time, who had just married a single mother who had 4 boys of her own of varying ages. The boy, who was my same age, let's call him Jordan, was the one that I spent the most time with while they were married, for obvious reasons. We didn't always get along, but for the most part, we were buddies. We had just signed an agreement on a new townhouse in an apartment complex, which, if you don't know, is essentially a big apartment with an upstairs and a downstairs. The house was completely empty at the time, but we had moved in anyway and hadn't brought all of our stuff over yet. Our parents decided to take the little ones with them to do errands and to leave Jordan and I home alone to just mess around and play, since we were older. We had a mattress and a television in Jordan's room with a Nintendo 64, if I remember correctly. It was hooked up so we could at least do something while we were there. Our parents drove away, and Jordan and I stayed playing the Nintendo just to pass the time. And note here that the house was 99% empty at this time. For the next part of this story, you have to understand the layout of our bedrooms. The upstairs of the townhouse had 3 bedrooms for me and my brother. When you reached the top of the stairs, there was one big bedroom to your right, and this was the little one's shared bedroom. To your left was Jordan's bedroom, and my bedroom was connected to his, meaning you had to pass through his to reach mine, which was an entirely separate room with its own door. Our parents' bedroom was at the very bottom of the stairs, a few feet away from the front door. We'd shut the door to Jordan's room, the one that exited into the hallway, just for the heck of it, not for any particular reason. We were playing our game when all of a sudden the door popped open again on its own. We weren't thinking much about it, so we just shrugged and closed the door again. But the door opened again on its own. It didn't bust open, it just sort of calmly popped open, as if someone opened it and peeked their head through the crack. Jordan and I started to speculate that maybe something was wrong with the door that caused it not to shut. We repeated the process many times, getting more and more nervous each time it happened. And finally, Jordan suggested that we go downstairs and wait for our parents to get home. So downstairs, we just lay down on the floor and stared out the glass back door and talked for a few minutes, discussing the possibility that wind was getting into the house somehow and pushing the door open. Not long after we started talking, we heard a hideous screeching noise coming from somewhere nearby. It was loud, long, and sounded near, but from what direction, we couldn't tell. It sounded a lot like a ring wraith from Lord of the Rings. Jordan's eyes were wide as saucers when we looked at each other fearfully. We told ourselves it was just a neighbor using a vacuum cleaner or something. We tried to just kind of, come up with excuses to help us deal with the fear that we were feeling inside. Now, we were really, really scared, so we decided to apply some good old-fashioned logic to this situation. We made double sure that all windows and doors downstairs were firmly shut, and we headed back upstairs. I suggested that we plug in a stand-up fan in the hallway outside our bedroom and point the fan away from the door to push any wind away. Just remember, we were kids. With our plan put into place, we shut the door again and we waited, standing inside Jordan's bedroom. We waited, and the door popped open again. Pop. It just calmly swung open. We repeated this a couple of times, and each time the door opened, we retreated to my bedroom and peered into the room to see it open. This time, we decided to put the disobedient door to the ultimate test. We locked the door from the inside, and there was no way that door was going to open when it was locked. It just was not possible. Jordan waited while I locked it and made sure it was locked, and I returned to our position and peeked into his room. We waited for a few moments. Our hearts were beating like drummers in our chests. Our hands were shaking, and we were watching the door really closely. It's like our whole attention was focused on that door. It opened. The door freaking opened again. I locked that damn door and it opened. Jordan and I both ran into the corner of my empty adjacent room. We were scared out of our minds, but we had to keep trying to shut it. We knew we did. I decided that I was going to lock it and shut it again. This happened one or two more times, me locking the door and us running away when it opened. The door popped open again, calmly but firmly, like it did before. I tiptoed through Jordan's empty bedroom, approaching the door with my eyes fixated on the wide opening. I could see into the hallway. Something came through the door. I don't know what it was, but I saw it. It was big and made completely of shadow blackness. No skin, no flesh, no hide or scales, just a pitch black form. It had two large, perfectly round yellow marbles for eyes. Its hands were like dinosaur claws, wide palmed with strange long fingers clutching the doorframe and peering into the room and right into my eyes. Two thick tendrils seemed to be sprouting from its head and fell behind its back like something from Star Wars. Update for 2018, it looked a lot like a Heartless from Kingdom Hearts. I got a good look at it for 1 solid second, no more, no less. A feeling of pure dread and horror just filled me inside. I screamed, Jordan screamed. Before I could react, some powerful force had pushed me backwards into the adjacent room. Maybe we ran, Jordan yanked me, I don't know. The memory is really fuzzy because it was many years ago. And I found myself sprawled on the floor against the wall. Jordan was huddled over me, crying and praying frantically out loud. My memory after that is a little blurry. I don't remember what happened between then and when our parents came home. I do remember that we tried to tell them the story of what happened, but in the usual classic parent fashion, they didn't believe a single word that we were saying. It went through one ear and out the other. I'm sure that Jordan has forgotten by now as well. We moved one or two more times after that, and our parents divorced after only being married a few years. I've kept this story mostly to myself because when you experience something like that, it scars you for life. And the last thing you want is for people to look at you with blank eyes, or kind of, I don't know, just kind of look at you as if they think you're crazy. So I've been very careful about who I share this with. Wow, that's a really powerful story. What a terrifying experience, especially for two boys, just shut away alone in the house. I just can't imagine, what that thing could have been, but it certainly sounds like it was not something good. And again, you kind of wonder what happened in that house to open the door, literally, to something like that, to come into this reality and haunt this house like that. And I wonder too what other people will be experiencing once they move into that house. The haunted martial arts school. Me and my husband own a martial arts school, and the building is really old. It's next to a church, and it's about 130 years old. And I never believed in the paranormal, but things that happened in it didn't just happen to me. It was decrepit, which is why it was so cheap to purchase, and we basically did all the work ourselves. It's old and creaky and drafty, and it still has knobs and tubes and things that we had to get an electrician to change out because it was all so outdated. So, anyway, here are a bunch of things that happened there, just to give you an idea of the kind of hauntings that went on there. When we'd be working with, say, like drills and electric saws, I'd hear the tinkling of a music box just sort of playing by itself. And I'd stop everyone to ask if they could hear it too. No one else could hear it, so I assumed it must have been some music from the church, maybe just coming through. So that's one thing that was really strange and, I couldn't explain. My husband would often hear a woman's voice calling his name from the bottom of the stairs. It's two floors, a basement, and a loft. And thinking it was me, back home from work, he would always ask if it would come up. Turns out the building was empty, and this happened maybe about 4 or 5 times, so it really started to creep us out. One night, there's a small apartment on the second floor connected to a large hall, by the way. We woke up hearing what sounded like a broom sweeping across the wooden floors in the large hall. My husband got up to go and check, but once he would walk in there, the sweeping sound would just stop. This happened about 3 more times that same night. So we chalked it up to maybe mice or squirrels. We did find some mummified squirrels in the attic once, but that was kind of a long time ago. We had a barbecue in the backyard one time, and I needed to get more utensils. There's a metal stairwell from the backyard up to the second floor. And then there's the main entrance staircase opposite that. I came up the main entrance and heard footsteps pacing back and forth across the far end of the hall. And I thought, my husband maybe, came up from the metal stairwell to get utensils with me. It was dark and I couldn't see anything. I called out to him, and then the pacing stopped. No response, and then the pacing footsteps continued again. Annoyed, I thought he was messing with me, so I flipped on the lights, and all of the utensils from the shelf where I heard the pacing suddenly crashed down to the floor, like I spooked something. But there wasn't anything, not even a rat like I thought there might be. One Saturday, and this is just another example of the kind of stuff that would go on there, my husband was on his computer and in another room. I'm in the apartment playing with an app on my iPad when I heard the stereo sitting in front of me click on, and a girl's voice started talking from it. I thought he controlled the stereo from his computer, so I just ignored it because he often puts on music to work out before class starts, and he teaches morning classes. I do remember thinking, what kind of weird indie music is he listening to anyway? Because the voice just said, "Hi, my name is." I thought I heard Katie, but I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't paying attention. I have never known a Katie in my life. "I am blah blah years old, blah blah, I'm from blah, etc." I didn't catch specifics because I wasn't really listening, but that went on for about 2 or 3 minutes until it suddenly went, "Something's hurting me." And when I caught that, I looked up and squinted at the stereo, like, what? "Something's killing me! Something killed me!" At this point, the hair is standing on the back of my neck, and I'm getting up from the couch to take a closer look. "Please, someone tell my parents, tell the teachers, tell the corrections officer." At the word corrections officer, I just bolt into the other room and start yelling at my husband and cursing him out because I was certain he was playing a trick on me. I told him, "We don't play jokes about dead people." And he's, of course, looking at me like, WTF? When he finally calms me down long enough to get what I heard out of me and what I was accusing him of, he told me it was impossible and led me to the stereo. It's not plugged in. I thought maybe the stereo picked up the signals from an ebook or something. So after that last fiasco, I went to ask our live-in student who lived with his girlfriend in the basement apartment of the building if anything weird was happening. They shot each other an alarmed look and told me this. His girlfriend was sleeping one night when he was working overnight, and she heard footsteps come down the stairs and their door opened and then closed. All of a sudden, a bright flashlight shines in her face, and she can just make out the silhouette of who she thought was her boyfriend because he's tall. And she could see the dirty jeans he's wearing. She was annoyed, thinking that he's messing with her, so she was swatting at him and telling him to stop. Finally, she got so fed up with it that she rolled over, turned on their lamp, and there was no one there. They sometimes hear footsteps as well on the first floor when there's no one in the building. They had a pet mouse at the time, and whenever that happened, it would start to do these backflips in its tank. However, When class is going on and there are people in the building, the mouse didn't care and just went about its normal business. They were play wrestling one day when suddenly their African gray parrot ruffled its feathers and, in a really alarmed voice, asked, "Who's there? Who's there?" They thought it was funny at first, so our student looked at the bird and pointed to the door and said, "You mean over there?" and ran towards the door to open it. As he did that, all the books that were lining the shelf on the way to the door fell over in front of him, and the light started to flicker. The bird and the mouse both got spooked and were throwing themselves against their cages. Our second live-in student after the first one got married to his girlfriend, got their own home, had a baby, etc. Several times could just not find his phone when he woke up in the morning when he had placed it next to his bed the night before. He would search his room high and low, and then he'd find it perfectly placed right outside his locked bedroom door on the floor. I thought he might have been sleepwalking, but his girlfriend says that, this wasn't possible. He just didn't do that. So I don't know what that was all about. Nothing notable has happened since then, but we have also not had anyone stay there overnight in years. Prior to this, I should mention, a few years back, I had a week of hallucinating people who weren't there, and spiders, which had increasingly insane colors, but they were also tactile hallucination because I felt them on my hand as well. Otherwise, I have no issues, and those symptoms never occurred again after that bizarre week. So, could it be that we were hallucinating? I don't know. I don't think so, but then I'm not sure either. Well, that certainly sounds like actually quite a typical haunted house in a way. As for, saying that, well, like if you're hallucinating and you see something, that means it's not real. As far as I understand, that's not the case. Like, if people, when they're doing drugs or, they've been drinking a lot of alcohol or some substance has made them kind of see things which they believe are not there. Um, that's what that does. It just means that your inner senses, if you like, have been opened up, but in a kind of forceful, artificial way. But it does not mean that the things that you are seeing are not there. And this includes, for example, things that people with certain mental health problems and things often see. Also, old people, nursing homes see things too. It does not mean that those things are not real, the things that they're seeing. It means there's a problem, certainly, because we're not normally um, inclined to see things like that. But when there's I don't know, some kind of illness or something, or then it does seem to open up that door for some people to see things. So hallucinations, yeah, then they're not great, but what you're seeing is generally something that's really there, on some level. So that's just something to consider because people often seem to excuse stuff they see as if it's not real just because they were under the influence of something or they were sick or whatever. Well, as far as I'm aware, that's not the case.